What's going on, everybody? It's your friendly neighborhood web developer, and we're back at it again with another web dev tutorial. Today, we're going to be exploring the world of SVG. I know this might feel a little intimidating for some of you, but just follow along with me here, and I'll show you how manageable it can be. Let's spin that web. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is open up Adobe Illustrator so that we can draw our shape. We'll go ahead and click Create New. And then from the web presets, we're going to choose Common and click Create. All right, and with the shape loaded here, we'll just kind of drag this into the center, zoom in a little bit. Okay. Now, I'm going to start by drawing a simple rectangle. I'm going to drag that cursor so you can see the word intersect on the upper left corner, and then the same down in the bottom right corner. And that actually creates a square. We'll change the fill to black, and there you can see that. Now what I'm going to do is open up our layer and lock that down. I'm actually going to turn that off temporarily while we draw our shape for the nav. And to draw the shape that's going to go around our navigation, we're going to go ahead and grab our pen tool here, and then we're going to look for about the center of the document. There we go. We'll click to draw our first point, and then we're just going to go ahead and click and drag to start a Bezier curve, and that'll just give the shape a nice clean appearance here. So we'll get that going. Draw a few more points, something like that, and like that, and maybe like that. And then lastly here, I'm just going to zoom in so that we can get this one right. And we're going to go like this temporarily. I'll show you in a minute what we're going to do with that. We're going to make sure that we go right along this intersection so that our shape isn't outside of our box, and then we're just going to close the path. All right, now with your pen tool still selected, we can go ahead and hold down the Alt key, and we can start to do a little bit of magic here by twisting this handle in a little bit. Maybe this one too. There. Okay. Now we're going to zoom out a little bit. And I want to change the fill on this. First, I'm going to turn the stroke off so that we don't have an outline on the shape. And then for the fill, I want to go with this nice mint color. It's 06F9E3. I came across it lately, and I like colors that pop, and this one just seems like a fun one. So now that we have that, I want to get this background turned back on so I can see a little bit what I'm doing. One more thing I'd like to do here, just to add a little bit more of an outline to this, is to grab a brush here. And we're going to put a little bit darker stroke on it just to make it pop a little bit. We're going to use 00A99D. It'll be just a nice little contrast with this mint color that we have for the shape. If we go into our brushes presets here and go to vector packs and the Grunge Brushes, this vector pack number 6, that's the one that I want to play around with. We'll get that out of my way. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of trace along the shape here. And I'm going to go a little bit of ways away from the shape just because it's going to come out kind of thick, and you'll see it looks really goofy initially, but we'll fix it. Alright, so that's actually not too bad right out of the gate. Our stroke is already set at 0.25, so that helps. Let's just grab our selection tool and move this up a bit. And maybe over here a tad. And then we'll just scrunch it up a little bit too. Alright, that looks decent enough. And now that we have our shape drawn, just going to zoom out a little bit here. And we're going to grab our selection tool. We're actually going to unlock this background layer here. We're going to go ahead and draw a box around the entire shape. Now we can right click and we're going to export the selection. And then we have our asset selected here. Make sure that your format is SVG. And then here you're going to choose where it's going to export to. I'm just going to export it to my folder that I have set up already. Click Export Asset. And there we go. And it's time to move on into the coding portion of this. Let's go ahead and pull up your command prompt. Just using one here. It's called Commander. So I'm going to go ahead and make a directory. We're just going to call it SVG demo, and then we're going to cd right into it. All right, now that we're there, we're going to go ahead and type code, and this is going to open up Microsoft Visual Studio Code for us. And now that we're in our code editor, we're going to need a few things. First, we're going to need an index.html. And then we're also just going to create a folder for our CSS. And in that folder, we're going to create a main.sass file. And when using a Sass file, you always want to make sure that you have your compiler ready. So we're going to watch for the CSS. All right, that's on. And now we can go ahead and start building some of the code for it. So we're going to want some basic stuff. We'll need body and HTML. We want to set our margin to 0. We're going to go with the height of 100 view height. Let's see, width at 100%. And then our fallback background's just going to be black. And then on the body itself, we want to use some absolute positioning here for the SVG element. So we're going to make the body position relative. Okay, moving on to our navigation container. We want that to be position relative as well. And we're going to give that right 0, top 50 pixels. Actually, this right 0 isn't going to do anything here. Let's just get that out right away. Okay, top 50 pixels. And then we're going to give it a z index of 2 so that it goes above the SVG element. We're also going to display flex so that we can justify our content to the center. And align them along the vertical axis centered as well. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I don't want to center that actually. I want to do that to flex end. Not sure what I was thinking there. All right, so then we're also going to do width. We're going to make that 100%. And that's why we're going to justify the content to the end there so that it ends up on the right side. And lastly, I just want to do a font family on this whole thing of Roboto Condensed. It's a nice looking font. I've been using it on some of my projects lately. It looks very nice and clean. And then in Sass, you can nest your CSS values. So we're just going to put the anchor tag right in there and get rid of those ugly text decorations that the browser likes to put on there. Next, we're going to make the link color black because that's going to stand out nicely against that minty green backdrop. We're going to give each one a right margin of about 50 pixels so that they have some space between each other. Do a text transform of uppercase because I've found that that plays nicely with this font as well. Change the font weight to something a little heftier. We'll go 900. And we'll do a font size of 24 pixels. You know what? Let's do a little bit of letter spacing as well. Let's try 5 pixels and see what that ends up looking like. All right, that's the bulk of it. Now we just need to set up some CSS for our SVG. So we're just going to set up a container with an ID of mySVG. That's going to be position absolute. And then that's going to be top 0, left 0, so that it's right up in the corner. Width 100%, height 100%. Very important. Otherwise, it won't work. Now, if we go ahead and save this, we've got our compiler turned on, and it'll automatically map our file. See, that's main.css.map. It'll compile it into this actual CSS file, which, if you've never worked with Sass before, this is kind of how it works. One of the main benefits of Sass and why I like to use it is because you can do fun things like add variables. For instance, if I wanted to create a variable for that mint color, I would just do $mint and then add the hex value. It's 06F9E3. And then if I wanted to call that in there anywhere, instead of having to write out that hex code and remember it when I'm 3,000 lines of code in, I would just add something like color mint, and we're done. Obviously, I don't want to do that in this case, but that's just a nice example for you. All right, we'll resave that. Now we need to go to our index.html, and in a lot of code editors, you can just hit an exclamation point and tab. It'll fill in some boilerplate HTML for you. And we're going to add our link to our CSS file. And then in here, we'll create our nav. And in our nav, we're going to create 4 links, which if we hold down Control and Alt on the keyboard, we can add some cursors down. They're all just going to be blank references right now, and they're going to say link. I'll take my cursors away and get this down here. 2, 3, and 4. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now we need to add our div with our ID of my SVG that we referenced in the CSS. Hit tab there, and in here is where we're going to put the inline Svg elements. Now I like to use inline Svg just because then there's no additional file request. Helps prevent some of those redirect bogging down errors that you'll get when you have a big site. It's also nice because then you can use CSS to add hover effects, change the fill colors, and things of that nature. So to get this SVG code that we're going to need, you need to open up the folder that has your asset that you just created in Illustrator, and then you double click it to open it up in a browser, most likely. And then if you hit Control U, you'll get the source code, which, because we used that grunge stroke, this got pretty huge. If we had left it as just a basic shape, this would really be pretty small. But we're going to go ahead and hit Control A to highlight, Control C to copy. And then if we go back into Visual Studio, we'll hit Control V to paste. And because I have my soft wrap toggled, you can see that this is a pretty long code. If you look in our little preview window over here to the right, it's pretty lengthy. So just to make my OCD at ease, I'm going to tap that over, and then I can just close this down. All right, now I have that saved out. I'm going to right-click on my file and open a live server. And that's going to open up my browser for me with the file. And let's take a look. Okay, not too bad. We've got a little bit of a spacing error. Must be an imperfection in the drawing of the shape. It's a pretty easy fix. All we're going to do is go back into here. Let's go into our CSS file. We're just going to add a little bit of a negative margin here. Let's try -10. And there we go. We've successfully created our own SVG in Illustrator and used it as a background in our own web page. Thanks again for watching this tutorial. If you liked it and you learned something, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. For more tips and tricks, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.